Good evening. Good evening, and thank you for coming out on a rainy evening. I'm Cecil Giskin. And tonight, in the final event of the 2014 Holloway Poetry Series, Miss Tennessee Reed will read from her work. And she'll be preceded by Mr. Ryan Ikeda. Sarah Johnson will introduce Tennessee Reed. Christiana Peck will introduce Ryan Ikeda. This is the final reading, as I mentioned, of the 2014 Holloway Poetry Series. Next term, readers in the series will include Peter Gizzi, Fred Moten, and a number of other writers. I'll mention that our friend Julie Underhill is here from University Press Books with copies of Tennessee Reed's books. So enjoy the readings and buy a book. Thank you, and I will yield this stage to Christiana Peck, who will introduce Ryan Ikeda.
Hi. I've had the pleasure to work with Ryan via the Conversant and now Essay Press, so I'm very happy to introduce him. Many of you know that Ryan is studying rhetoric here at Berkeley. He also has an MFA in poetry, as well as a second degree in environment and natural resources from the University of Wyoming. And prior to graduate school, Ryan was a high school English teacher for almost a decade. I also recently learned that Ryan officiates weddings, and so he wears multiple hats. So I read portions of one of his manuscripts entitled Witness, and in an email, Ryan explained that these series of poems examine different speech acts, where a language performs and enacts violence on its speakers. And reading through his work, I found that his poems are also composed of a language of the aftermath. They create the space for readers to contemplate the often unarticulated implications of both experience and trauma. His poems become, as in Ryan's words, the quote-unquote mirror that unfurls into a future backwards, and quote-unquote time unravels as it spirals versions of self across eras. So I'm looking forward to hearing Ryan tonight.
Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Draft. Couldn't add to eye a list, nor flesh subtract from thoughts of teeth self. About under the beach I ate corpse portions of food, knowing nothing preserves like being happy, chasing after wind. Applied to mind, enduring no remembrance from mirrors save present reflections. A likeness that lasts as long as I stand here and make it. The sea can never be full. Still hungry, this too shall pass. Work could not eat, fruit of labor beasted, beached. Boy's body, too hot and stuffy, marks question. I couldn't separate me from you and the fitness of becoming. Resolved to know, meaning us, what cannot be spoken, billows, billowing away, winded body wanting, so breathe and breathe and breathe and breathe and breathe and lacking air, swallowed sky. First snow. The first snow gives neighbors something to talk about, the warmth of shared recognition, knowing what you too have experienced is true, making angels across the fallen ramparts of a snow castle, giggles uncontained by children rise from under hoods 2 sizes too big. I trudge along the sidewalk, careful of the ice, the untied laces of my boots, shoving gloveless hands into fleeced pockets. The street is white, quiet even. It is almost noon, and besides the children, I am the only one who seems to be awake. This is Flight, Laramie to Jackson. Shout out to you, Ed. To see the earth through a veil of clouds and rest not among summer grass, where curled hands cradle necks that search unblinkingly upward, meaning from sky, but from the eye of a plane surveying the earth, an angle unaccustomed to the understanding we fashioned for our dirt-bound selves, observing from great heights what we are too immersed to see, how roads scar the land, subdued into squares, how streams run into rivers like veins through a leaf. Azizam, were I to marry you again today, knowing what I didn't know then and more, were I to whisper in mine ears, run, and into yours, sweet spirit, flee this wretched configuration that damns our souls, there is yet time. And even then we appeared and even if then we appeared upon that lonely island, beneath the borrowed arch and outstretched branches of that gnarled oak, if still my hands reached toward yours and your fingers did not recoil, how to enter then, at that moment, vow-laden, dumb, pursuant of love and this alien formation. How the words I would say, how they could not reckon us right nor undamage your feet, raw from walking too long this path with me. Still, if then under an oak we did appear, knowing more of who we are not and less who we want the other to be, then to think what could in honesty I promise, knowing the length of leaving that cleaves within a heart enclosed by yet to come. Perhaps there is no room for poetry anymore between us, no inveigled sentiment, save heist resting from your womb, time, or blindness from my eyes. Ours is not a dimness, but a half-light stalking the sunrise at dawn. To mime then, and only mime now, our reflection in search of one last truth enduring longer than the crepuscular dark that encroaches hours too early. Somewhere we are standing, arms entwined, not writhing. To you, my love, my only, exchanging the poetry I promised for something more substantial. Goberneparam, Eshkeman. This next set of poems is entitled Prepositions Young with Men, Young Women, and it comes from a larger project that chronicles a missions trip from 1997, and I kind of interrupt these episodes with transcriptions from the same missions trip organization. Transcriptions from the same missions trip organization 15 years later that I transcribed off of their YouTube account. So the ones that pertain to the 1997 trip, the chronicle, those are titled, the transcriptions are not. Prepositions. Before, day 73. How many of your fathers have ever taken you dancing? Standing in a semicircle at Piazza San Marcos as the sun sets overseas. The word dancing lingers into longing as Louis opens arms in Venice. It's the way he says Venice that makes some of the young women squirm, handled by a should have, as in, you, your dad. Let me stand in for your fathers tonight. 5 or 6 line up and waltz with Louis. Size, goals, wind. It's Team India. How you doing? You know, you might be small, but you're powerful, right? You know, I had a team this size last year, but it was the best team because they're so tight. You know what? Here's what I want to say right at the start. This summer, we believe in you more than you believe in yourselves, huh? Just think about it a little bit. We believe in you more than you believe in yourselves this summer. All right, let's get them unloaded. Silence. Silence. Then murmuring. a scattering of faces, shuffling off a yellow school bus, voices off camera. It's gonna be a wet night, and ooh, I don't fit through here. Down, day 73. Reasons for dancing, Louis gives back at the campsite. Husbands, fathers, God. It was to redeem for young women, men. You watch, voice flickers. Most memorable time of the whole summer will be tonight. Full of shit, I think, swallowing immediately. The next morning I sweep his tent or carry the duffels to bus. From day 54. In Prague, we hurry through Old Town Square beneath a memorial for Jan Hus to perform among statues lining Charles Bridge. As the act ends, I approach a man with sad, familiar eyes staring at an effigy of St. Augustine. Before I can retrieve a tract from my pocket, he murmurs, eyes unbreaking gaze. These have erased older, deeper memories. When you search Scripture, you will find there are teenagers that changed the course of history. The Josephs, the Marys, they were all teenagers when God used them in a powerful way. Why? Because kids, I believe, are the cross-section of our culture that will change the course of history. Hello, it's me again, Louis. We're on top of the Masada with our students. We started at 4:40 this morning climbing the Masada, that's AM, not PM, to see the sun coming over the Moabite hills. The Masada means fortress, and God is our fortress. Times, day 24. Rumbles of young men slap the back of John's hands, remnants listing until he moves. Beneath noonday sun, or I miss. Dream team women shower, if. And the lesser ones on other teams play ultimate frisbee or British bulldog, twirl devil sticks, rehearse from memory 4 spiritual laws, if. At John, I miss. John's fingers flex hands the prayer position. You can hit me. Extend arm's length from belly, waiting to evade Louis' strikes. Slap, hands hold, slap, reddening. Slap, slap. Move, John, you're supposed to move. Whack, hands bunched into fist. And they're going to wonder who you are when all 40 of you, 45 of you gather in the middle of the public square in Prague to do this big dance drama thing. They're going to be walking around asking people, who are these people? Who are you? And you're going to say, I am deeply loved by God, completely forgiven, fully pleasing, powerfully equipped, totally accepted, and complete in Christ. Near day 11. As I sit the 12 with Jesus, as her smiling at feet, all men of God perhaps reveal secret to shoulders as pats or shares, a joke perhaps when later the team eats, noodle boodle and someone says something that reminds us of joking we laugh deeply in public, our private moment exchange knowing our glances. Save day 4. Inclining from moment, a calling for meanwhile, a God who can rupture our lives to purpose, to render concerning elsewhere or anywhere this failing, that following as long as, is somewhere, is terrible, is something regarding this moment that meanwhile is meaningful but up to. Teeter's backless blue footstools not backward, white canvas before cornfields, and bodies like bodies do deepening, a dampness not darkness, dampening into deepness, royalties, no t-shirts from sticking, no skin. Since day 1. First words by virtue question. Don't want to be here really, do you? Louis reclines into his 60s into a frayed red and white beach chair at the back of a rusty yellow school bus next to his 26-year-old senior woman, Rachel. Removes backwards baseball cap, combs through thinning white hair, fingers. Bus ferries dreamers from O'Hare to training camp. Stares through the silences at me until I finally confess, no, I don't want to be here. We believe that if we bring a student home with a broken heart, they will not live their lives out with trivia, but with purpose and with a destiny of eternity in view. All right, so the last poem I have tonight, this one has been haunting me for a little while. It's called Nova. The stars aren't really there anymore. It's just light, an afterglow of past existence. Bodies that collapse into themselves do not simply appear dead. Their likeness lingers long enough to be named by us still standing here. Thank you.
Sarah Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Tennessee Reed has been writing for a long time, since she was 4, and there is something settled in about her poems. It is an easy confidence that seems to say, ah, yes, well, let me tell you a story, let me tell you something. The world of her poems is local, familiar, and intensely precise. In a recent poem called Hesus, I think that's how it's pronounced, she writes, quote, "It is Labor Day weekend, 2006. Longtime family friend Lucia Dominguez takes me to a Baptist church in the Richmond Hills. I am told to wear a skirt or dress the night before since I am going to a Spanish-speaking church on 36th Street off McDonald Avenue in the flats of Richmond later on in the morning. I am not allowed to wear pants." The texture of the everyday, of the colors and sounds of the quotidian, makes me feel when I read Tennessee Reed's poetry that I am privy to her memories. The reader is at her side as she travels the world, but most vividly as she covers the familiar territory of Berkeley and Oakland, California. And she fears not the commodity or its proximity to our person. Her recent poetry is peppered with objects that you know. Continuing the poem, he says, quote, "I dress in a mauve gap-colored pleated skirt, with a matching blouse, a denim Guess jacket, some DKNY pantyhose, and some purple-heeled sandals that give me cushion by Dansko. I wrap my hair into a neat bun with a periwinkle blue velour express hair tie, and citrine heart-shaped studs in my ears. Lucia complains that people are wearing jeans, sweatshirts, and sneakers to church." The ebb and flow of the day is for Reed the picking up and putting down of things we hold close or dear. We are reminded that the book of her poems that we hold is another such object, to be italicized alongside Michael Jackson's Thriller and Beyonce's I Am Sasha Fierce. But the tangible is not Reed's only mode. She sometimes opens up a new world. Quote, "A story about what happened when a little girl could not get out of the universe. There were so many holes surrounding her in the universe. It was like a cyclone's eye," she said. Tennessee Reed is an alumnus of this university and Mills College in Oakland. She is currently the managing editor of Conch Magazine and the secretary of Penn Oakland, and I so look forward to her reading.
Good evening. Thank you for coming this evening, despite the weather. I would like to thank C.S. Giscombe for this opportunity, Jane Gregory for helping arrange the event, and Julie Tide Underhill at University Press Books for arranging the sale of the books. Tonight I will be reading poems that I've written from ages 5 to 37. Some are published, others are unpublished and are in no chronological order. I'll start off with a poem from my most recently published collection, New and Selected Poems, 1982 through 2011, published by World Parade Books. It's called Roses for Rose Street. Roses for Rose Street was written in 2008 and was published in Berkeley Side magazine in 2010. Roses for Rose Street. Leaving Berkeley Horticultural Nursery, we turned left on Rose Street, heading towards Shannon Place. Our destination, Safeway, in the Gourmet Ghetto neighborhood where Rose and Shannon Place meet. I had never noticed roses on Rose Street until that day. Before, I had just paid attention to the Japanese red maple trees and California live oak trees lined up in front of homes,
Too close to the microphone.
with many different types of flowering bushes planted on the edges of lawns, in front of living room windows, between McGee Avenue and California Street. I was thinking about how Rose Street got its name as we passed by a house with an all-yellow hybrid tea rose bush, signs of platonic or dying love, in front of a house between Grant Street and Edith Street. I thought about the song, Yellow Rose of Texas, that I learned about from a friend at work who is from the Dallas area and whose boss brought her a dozen yellow roses as a thank you gift. Then I saw a large shingled house between Josephine Street and Grant Street with a large light pink hybrid tea rose, a sign of sympathy and admiration. Now when we passed by, I checked for the large bald eagle painted under the roof on the Josephine Street side of the house, and the painted squirrel on the Rose Street side, and red and green jalapeno peppers. The house is a Western stick-style house, a sign of the arts and crafts movement. In between Milvia Street and Bonita Avenue, I saw many climbing roses in front of homes in a variety of different colors, red, pink, yellow, and white. At the Men's Faculty Club at the UC Berkeley campus, where we celebrated Mom's birthday, I asked a longtime family friend, John Roberts, who is a landscape architect, how Rose Street got its name. He replied that the developers named it after they killed the roses in order to build the street. The next poem I'm going to read is called Thursday's Rainbow, which was also published in my first collection of poetry, Circus in the Sky, published in 1988 by I Read Books. It was published in the San Francisco Examiner. This is a poem I the first consciously wrote when I was 5 years old. Thursday's Rainbow. One day when the rainbow was coming, the rain began to drizzle. A person sat on a swing in the sky. She was just perfect on the swing. It was really drizzling. It was a circus in the sky. The rainbow was just perfectly there. And the girl swang all around the world. She was so high, higher than me. She was really upside down in the sky. She was so beautiful. She was looking like a black person. She looked inside the sky, and the rainbow was still there in the sky. She had the beautiful colors in the sky. The next poem I'm reading was based off of my name. I was 10 years old when I wrote it, and I was in Boston. It's called The Tennessee Poem. My name is Tennessee, and all its people are inside of me. My lungs are Nashville, My heart is Chattanooga, my veins are its rivers, my kidneys are Memphis, and Lookout Mountain is my head. The next poem I will read, I wrote in the summer between 5th and 6th grades. This was the first poem of mine that was published in a major anthology, and I framed the check. This poem shows you how much of a visual thinker I am. It's called the W poem. Wednesdays are my favorite days because they start with a W, and Wednesdays are the middle of the week, and I like the middle. I started liking Wednesdays about 8 or 7 years ago, and I never changed from my favorite day. Wednesday is the poet's day because the Roman god of the middle of the week is Mercury, a poet's god, and the German god is the middle of the week is Woden, a poet's god. Wednesday's from water, I think, because water starts with a W, and Woden is the rainstorm god. I think Woden likes to sing a lot, the rain songs, drip drop, drip drop, drip drop, drip drop. And I'm Pisces the fish, and I like to swim a lot. The Greeks had no W, the Latins had no W, the English had a W since 1066. They got it from the Germans. It's a double V, so why is it called a W? I think because the shape of the character was invented from 2 U's. I like W words: win, won, wood, wet, west, well, where, water, and Washington. I wish every day was Wednesday because although I like Friday sometimes, I like some space on either side of my week. It makes me feel warm, like having 2 friends sitting with me. The next poem I'm going to read, I wrote in the summer between 6th and 7th grades. I was up in Seattle, Washington. Dad was teaching for a summer at the University of Washington, Seattle, and we stayed at the home of the writer Heather McHugh. She's a poet, I think, and she had a huge poster of a Hershey's chocolate bar in the room where I was staying. Electric chocolate, first piece. I like Hershey's chocolate bars because they are rich and creamy. I imagine that the tree in our front yard is growing Hershey's. The telephone poles and wires are made of Hershey's. I pretend I go out and pick them off of the tree. The poles are chocolate wood, the wires are electric chocolate. Hershey's milk chocolate bars. Second piece. I wish I saw Hershey's everywhere. I wish my house was made of Hershey's. I wish I slept in a Hershey's bed. I wish I swam in chocolate water. I wish I was made of chocolate color. I wish this was Hershey's writing. I wish the world was made of Hershey's. Now jumping to my 3rd book, Airborne, poems 1990 to 1996. The first poem I'm going to read out of here is called Cardiovascular Lesson. I wrote this when I was 13 and in 8th grade, and in my general science class we were studying anatomy. That was one of my favorite subjects to study in science. Cardiovascular Lesson. Once I thought that the heart was shaped like the heart we draw for Valentine's, and the blood inside was red instead of blue. Then I asked if the heart inside was like the heart we draw for Valentine's, and the answer was no. It looks more like a clenched fist. But when the blood inside hits the oxygen outside, it turns from blue to red. The next poem I'm going to read, I also wrote in 8th grade, and we were studying the periodic table of the elements. Human mind. Some people say we have earth, fire, air, and water in our bodies, a complete chart of elements. If an element is one of the parts that make up a whole, a substance that can not easily be broken, There's an element of truth to the saying, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and a reason to discover the gold and silver mines that are within. Now I'm jumping 6 years later to the fall of 1996, and I was 19. Study of a young smiling flight attendant. In an American Airlines ad that appears on CNN, a young flight attendant walks down the gateway. With a curious frown, she's looking at airplanes parked at the gates. She is like the woman in Portrait of Victorine Marin by the painter Edouard Manet. The plane takes off. It's a DC-10. Segue to inside the cabin, a little girl kneels in her mom's lap, held close and tight. As she looks over the back of the seat, the mother and daughter are right out of Madonna of the Chair by Raphael. Her mother is pointing at something as they sit and talk by the window. The young flight attendant appears again, smiling at all the passengers, like the woman in Pontormo's Portrait of a Young Woman. Segue to outside in a heavenly blue sky. The American Airlines plane is flying, like the angel in A Maiden's Dream by Lorenzo Lotto. Segue to inside the plane's interior, a man and a woman holding hands, like the Arnolfini marriage by Jan van Eyck. The flight attendant is smiling at them again, like the woman in The Madeleine by Bernardino Luini. The screen turns black, ad copies roll in white as the piano continues to play the advertising jingle. I wish I'd met this flight attendant with her inviting smile, who fooled me into thinking I would find her in real life. I found her in a movie called Baby's Day Out. She played a mother looking for a baby who had memorized the images in a book and traveled all over town looking for the images, just like I traveled over 4 centuries to find images in that world's museums that matched that perfect day. The next set of poems I'm going to read are the most recent ones. They have not been published yet. These were written between 2012 and 2014. The first poem I'm going to read is called The Mid-Afternoon Brain Freeze. It is June of 2011 on a Tuesday afternoon. I go to the Starbucks at City Center Plaza in Oakland with the former American, United, and Delta ticket office turned into a AAA insurance office, Top Dogs, Wells Fargo, Dress Barn, Jamba Juice, and Panda Express. Down at the bottom is 12th Street BART. I go purchase a double espresso for Dad. It is 3 o'clock on the dot. There is a long line, even though it is a hot day. The line is filled with young people dressed for work in suits, high heels, or dress shoes, talking on their Bluetooth devices. The short, stocky girls in their teens or early 20s, in short shorts, T-strap sandals, and graphic T-shirts, with a group of 3 or 4 friends. There are a lot of people sitting at laptops, reading books, working on a laptop or tablet, or listening to an MP3 player. The place is packed with the sounds of customers having conversations, the baristas shouting orders, the machines filling up cups with coffee and whipped cream, and the music blasting from the monitor to my right, describing the title, artist, and album. I notice one young woman over by a window, working on a silver MacBook Pro, and sipping on an iced mocha frappuccino. It is mixed with espresso, sugar, cocoa, and low-fat milk, inside of a clear plastic cup with the Starbucks logo on it. She sips on it through a green straw. I finally get to the front and order the double espresso, wait for it for 5 minutes, and then head back through the rotunda of the Federal Building, consisting of 2 twin towers, to the Victorian homes turned into offices at Preservation Park, with white picket fences and climbing roses. shaded by trees, and people sitting on the grass in front of the gazebo to hand Dad his double espresso. He is sitting on a wrought iron bench behind the Persian fountain underneath an old-fashioned street lamp. There was a long line, I said. Everyone was having their mid-afternoon brain freeze. The next poem I'm going to read I wrote on my 37th birthday. Swimming can be like riding. It can be quick and short, or slow and long. Starting a poem can be hard, like diving into cold water from a racing block. It can be like the I am, individual medley, where a lot of thoughts can be spilled out into one stanza, like when one does a freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, and butterfly, all within 100 yards. Sometimes writing a poem takes a while to get perfect, like the breaststroke, glide, kick, breathe, or it just comes out, like the 50-yard 50. Sometimes the pace of ideas continues with flip turns during a 400-meter freestyle. Different poems are like the different speed lanes in an Olympic swimming pool, slow, medium, and fast. Ending a poem can be intense, like climbing out of the toasty, steaming water of the Speaker Aquatic Complex pool at Cal on a cold, rainy February day. The next poem I'm going to read is a two-part poem. This is one of my many pest poems. L.R. Californicus, Part 1. It is around 1:00 p.m. on May 6, 2013. I, the Burns bobcat species of California, west of the Sierra Nevada, am minding my business, hunting in the tall grass near the Marin Headlands Art Center for insects, rabbits, small rodents, and deer. It is unusual for me to hunt at this time of day. I am supposed to be resting in a thicket. I usually hunt the 3 hours before sunset to midnight, and then before dawn, and the 3 hours after sunrise. My prey has different schedules now that it is the driest year on record. My keen sense of hearing makes me hear a car door slam. I look up, and with my sharp vision, I see two women, one younger and one middle-aged, looking in my direction. The young woman is wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and the middle-aged woman is wearing a brown top, khaki, and a hat. I hear, "What do you think that is? Do you think that's a coyote or a fox?" From the middle-aged woman. The younger woman zooms in, her Nikon Coolpix P90. I sit down and turn my head to the left. Even though I live on the urban edge, I don't see people all that often. My ancestors have been here for 1.8 million years, but the people think they own the place. They build their homes in the woods, mountains, and deserts where me and my relatives live. Yet they want to kill me because they think I'm a threat. They dump their trash as they take their hikes and camp, and they even mix us with their domestic cats for an exotic animal. I hear the younger woman say in an excited voice, "It's a cat, it's a bobcat." My bright green eyes blend in with the grass, my tawny face with the white muzzle and white chin, and the brown stripe pattern on my cheeks and forehead poke out. The black tufts on my ears stick up. As I pose for the photo, I go back to hunting. I hear the women get back in the car, turn their motor on, and take off. I feel more at ease. Part 2. I know how this bobcat feels. Our street and surrounding streets have been swept up by an invasion of techies, yuppies, and millennials from San Francisco. The blacks who once occupied the area are dead, priced out, or foreclosed to other cities, Antioch, Vallejo, Stockton, and Castro. Ever since the bakery lofts were built down the street, it is hard to park the car in front of the house. On street sweeping days, it is worse. When I back out of the driveway, it is more complicated and dangerous with the big red whale of a car parked in front of the house, when there is plenty of space across the street in front of their house. A young couple walks their tan and white pit bull while they push their young infant in a jogging stroller. A woman with tattoos up and down her arms walks 2 more tan and white pit bulls, 1 in each hand. Why so many pit bulls? Are they 4-legged Zimmermans patrolling the blacks who remain? An older gray-haired couple walk their 2 collies each morning. They look like miniature oxen. They let their dogs do their due on their lawn. They don't pick it up. Our neighbors next door ask in a panic, "Do you know if our neighbors have a beehive? There's a swarm in our backyard, and they look like they are coming to yours." A cloud of bees hover over the rosemary bush. The beekeeper comes to the front door suited up and says, "I have come to collect my bees." To quote Dad, as soon as you get rid of one pest, another one comes along. These particular pests ride bicycles. Next poem I'm going to read is called The Climate Change Blues. There's a drought in California and record snowfall in the east. I say there's a drought in California and record snowfall in the east. We have to ration water and pay more money for what we eat. Washington State had mudslides and Dallas had a major snowstorm. Washington State had mudslides and Dallas had a major snowstorm. Thousands of flights were canceled and Super Typhoon Haiyan took form. The hay fever started early and the cherry blossoms began to bloom. The hay fever started early and the cherry blossoms began to bloom. The dog shed her winter coat in January. The smoggy air loomed and loomed. There's a shortage of tornadoes and an active hurricane season. There's a shortage of tornadoes and an active hurricane season. Hail and thunderstorms are more common throughout the Bay Area region. The bears came out of hibernation in February, and the mosquitoes bit me on a hot April afternoon. The bears came out of hibernation in February, and the mosquitoes bit me on a hot April afternoon. The boars were roaming San Ramon, and the Chinook salmon spawning ended too soon. There's a drought in California and record snowfall in the east. We have to ration water and pay more money for what we eat. The next poem I'm going to read is about an iguana at the Lake Merritt Center, at an aviary. This is the first time I've really gotten up close and personal to a reptile, a new fascinating type of animal for me. Spike the iguana. It is a Saturday afternoon at Lake Merritt. I am visiting the Rotary Nature Center by the aviary, where I look at the dioramas of the many shorebirds, the American black bear, and the mountain lion. I look at the honeybee hive, the tarantulas with its cricket meal, and the California tuxedo king snake. There is a cage with 2 abandoned mallard ducks on the way to the Dunsmuir house where they will live in the lake. I exit the nature center and see a young woman taking pictures in the potted plants. I walk over to see what it is there. As I come closer, I see an iguana sunning itself. It looks up at me and watches me walk towards it. Its dewlap under its jawbone hangs down, showing me that it is feeling threatened or warning me that I've entered its territory. I take out my phone to take photos. It sticks its tongue out to smell me and my phone. I found out its name is Spike and that it is a female from one of the Nature Center's staff members. She is 13 years old. He says I can pet her because I'm curious about what her skin feels like. She feels like a ton of needles. She closes her eye and relaxes. I pet her spine, which looks like a dorsal fin. She opens her eyes and looks back at me. When I take pictures of her, she looks right into the camera. A crowd of people surround her, taking photos. She looks around at everyone and into the different cameras. The Nature Center staff comes out and puts lettuce in front of her. She begins to eat. I say goodbye to her. I see Spike a second time. She is in the same potted plant. I call her name. She turns around to look at me and then sticks her tongue out to smell me. She looks like she recognizes me. I pet her and she closes her eyes again. She moves her front left leg to stretch. She likes all the attention and poses for the cameras. Dad comes to look at her and asks if she was the kind of animal that attacked Sharon Stone's husband. When I say goodbye, she watches me go. Okay. The next series of poems I'm going to read are animal poems. I wrote these for my graduate school thesis, which seems like many moons ago. These were written between the fall of 2003 and the fall of 2004. And my thesis is in the rare room at the Mills Library. The first one is called Circus Tiger. At the Universal Circus, 6 white tigers and 2 Bengal tigers sit on their haunches in an arc, surrounding the gorgeous Amira Diamond, the first black female animal trainer in the world, who is dressed in a gray and black tiger, striped see-through tankini with matching leggings and long black boots. They stare at her, eyes glistening gold and aquamarine. They open their huge mouths, showing fierce white teeth, as she flicks her whip in front of their noses. When she ignites the hoop into a circle of fire, a white tiger cooperates, flying through the flames. But a Bengal tiger hesitates, then turns back around and jumps down. He narrows his eyes at the trainer as if to say, "Hell no, I'm not jumping through that hoop. Do I look like I got the word stupid written across my forehead?" Miss Diamond looked peeved. This is one of those times, she says in an interview, that he pulled a fast one on her, and although she looks like she wants to whip his ass, she puts the flame out. The next poem I'm going to read is called The Immigrant in My Garden. The earthworm slithers across the garden's wet cement in front of the bird of paradise on a Saturday afternoon after a heavy rainfall. It is hard to imagine that this worm is a second or third generation illegal immigrant whose ancestors stowed away to the New World from South America, Europe, or Asia. When I pick him up, he examines the palm of my hand by bobbing his head, then curves into the same shape as our large intestine. I try to understand how far back we go, since scientists say we're close cousins when it comes down to the count of our DNA. The next poem I'm going to read is called On the Old Santa Fe Trail. It is a dry, cold day in mid-December in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Dad, Mom, and I drive in our rented Indigo blue Buick Century down Old Santa Fe Trail. Our destination, the Museum of Indian Arts and Cultures, sits at the end of the trail. I look out the right side window at the desert, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in the background. A light yellow coyote appears from behind cacti, long pointed ears on upright alert, bushy tail swaying back and forth in the strong wind, black eyes watching the moving cars. Suburban commuter coyote departs her bedroom community to track the city, where she works hard to find human food to take home to feed her babies. Dad slams on the brakes, swinging Mom and me forward to avoid hitting this modern-day single mom on her own rush hour schedule as she crosses the trail and disappears among thousands of cacti. The next poem I'm going to read is called The Buffalo Revival. I remember this is what got me hooked on Animal Planet, watching the show. On Animal Planet, the wild American buffalo herd roams within the boundaries of Montana's Yellowstone National Park land, running 37 miles per hour, tall and wide, goatees hanging from their chins, long noses flat to their skulls, closed mouths giving a serious look, their shaggy bulk wobbling along on skinny legs. Beady black eyes notice the camera, recording the echo of their thumping hooves as these nomads return to their winter home. The scene takes place in 2004. By the looks of this healthy herd, one would never guess that General William Tecumseh Sherman, U.S. Commander-in-Chief of the Western Forces, ordered the extermination of these gorgeous beasts over 100 years ago, as sacrifice to end the Indians' way of life. The Great Plains became a sea of unused, stinking, skinned buffalo carcasses. The pelts landed on laps and backs of the Eastern carriage trade, and buffalo tongues tickled their gourmet palates. The last poem I'm going to read in this book is called Diva latrodectus asperus, the scientific name for the black widow spider. The black widow spins into tangles her complicated crisscross castle of a web, her shiny black 1-inch body, distinguished by a red hourglass-shaped insignia glowing on her belly in the Arizona desert night. Waiting for beetles and cockroaches, instead she attracts a male black widow, half her size, marked with red dots along his back, who crawls into her silky nest. He begins to dance, his desire to mate. She falls for his display. 10 seconds later, she pounces on him, snapping off one of his legs with a rush. As she gnaws on this delicacy, he struggles to hobble away on his remaining 7 legs, but she jumps him again. She consumes him after sucking his bodily fluids out, puncturing him and injecting a toxin 15 times more deadly than a prairie rattlesnake. She was his queen and he the stud, who will never be able to brag to his buddies the next day. The last poem I'm going to read is called How High the Moon. This is one of those couple month-long poems that I write, and the poem was premiered at the 2nd Annual SF Jazz Poetry Festival. How high the moon? Did you see the pink strawberry supermoon in June, or the orange September harvest moon rising over the Oakland hills on a fogless night? What about the August sturgeon moon that looked blue? The moon is 4.5 billion-year-old debris after impact between Earth and Mars. The Apollo 11 landed there in 1968. I wonder what the view of the Earth looked like 238,900 miles, or 1 light year away. Its crust, mantle, and core changing colors each month. From Earth, I can see its Maria, or lunar plains, and some of its 300,000 craters when I zoom in with my Nikon Coolpix P510. There was a face on the crescent moon in October. It was looking down at me at the DoubleTree by Hilton Hotel, Berkeley Marina, before the fog rolled in. Maybe it was Shangyi, the Chinese immortal moon goddess, who swallowed the pill of immortality. Her husband, Hu Yi, sought the Queen Mother of the West to ban the mortality punishment, cursed on him by the Jade Emperor for killing his 9 sons. Shangyi rose up into the heavens until she landed on the moon. The full hunter's moon of October are the Greek goddesses, Selene, goddess of the moon, and the goddess of the hunt, Artemis of Mount Latmos. They remind us that they have resurrected the island of Patmos after it had sunken into the sea. In December, Immigrant, the Yoruba moon goddess of the ocean, motherhood, and children, rises during dusk over the pine trees at the Strawberry Canyon Fire Trail in the hills above UC Berkeley before she reaches her fullest point. Venus sets to the west and Jupiter rises to the east. A few days later, Imanya is dressed in a fine evening gown of turquoise, orange, and black. In Brazil, people dress in white and flock to the Copacabana beach in Rio de Janeiro and offer her jewelry, perfume, combs, lipstick, white flowers, and mirrors. On the 2nd of January, the new wolf moon shines against the purple dusk sky. As it begins to wane on January 23rd, it makes a silver half circle in the morning sky. The February snow moon is my favorite. At sunset, it rises gleaming in white and pink. In the darkness, it peeks through the black clouds. It shines in gold. By the time my birthday comes around, it has completely waned. As daylight saving time arrives in March, the crow moon lingers over downtown Berkeley at 4:15 in the afternoon, signaling the end of winter is near and the crows will make their last caws of the season. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. I'll take the moon any way it presents itself to me, whether it be the old devil moon, the shine on harvest moon, the moon over Miami, the blue moon, or many moons ago, or Joy Harder's moon as in, what moon drove me to this? Moon, what would we do without you? The star that spices up the sky. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Stick around, talk to the poet, buy a book, come back in the spring semester. Or